It was a vision that felt like a nightmare. Ezekiel, the prophet, stood in a valley so vast it seemed to stretch beyond the horizon, littered with bones. Not just bones, but dry bones, brittle, lifeless, scattered without order or identity. There was no sign of flesh, no remnant of muscle, no echo of life, just the haunting silence of death. It was as if an entire army had been slain and left to decay under a sun that had long forgotten mercy. The wind whispered through the hollow sockets of skulls, and Ezekiel's heart ached at the sight. This was no ordinary battlefield. It was a symbol of a people once strong, now broken. A nation, Israel, crushed by exile, scattered across foreign lands, stripped of its temple, its purpose, and perhaps even its hope. And then, amid the deathly silence, came the voice of the Lord, asking a question that cracked the air like lightning. "Son of man, can these bones live?" Ezekiel looked around at the impossible scene. The bones were beyond dry, they were forgotten. But he did not answer with despair. With wisdom born of knowing the one who speaks worlds into existence, he replied, "Sovereign Lord, you alone know." And then came the command. Not to gather, not to bury, but to prophesy. Speak, Ezekiel. Speak to what is dead. Declare life where none remains. And so Ezekiel, standing in the middle of that desolate valley, lifted his voice to the bones. "Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life." And as the words left his lips, the ground began to shake. A rumble, faint at first, then growing louder until it roared through the valley. Bone met bone with a clatter that echoed like thunder. Skulls rolling toward spines, ribs snapping into place, femurs locking into hips. The skeletons assembled in eerie synchronicity, forming full human frames. Sinews stretched over bone like thread pulled tight. Muscles layered on muscle and skin wrapped them whole. But still they lay still. There was no breath, no spark. Just silence again, now heavy with anticipation. Then God said, "Prophesy to the breath. Call the wind, invite the spirit, command the breath from the four corners of the earth to enter these slain." Ezekiel obeyed, and as he spoke, the breath came like a storm, divine wind rushing over the bones, into nostrils that had never drawn air. Eyes flickered open, chests heaved, fingers twitched. Then, one by one, they stood. First a few, then hundreds, then thousands. An army not just resurrected, but reborn. Their faces no longer hollow, but filled with purpose. Their hearts no longer cold, but beating with destiny. It was no longer a valley of death. It was a cradle of life and a symbol of what God would do for his people. "These bones," the Lord said, "are the people of Israel. They say, 'Our bones are dried up and our hope is gone.' But I will bring you back to life. I will open your graves and restore you. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live." The vision wasn't just for Ezekiel's time. It's for anyone who has ever walked through their own valley of dry bones. For the mother who has lost her joy. For the man who has lost his purpose. For the soul who has wandered so far from home they don't believe they can return. God still speaks to dry bones. He still breathes life into what the world calls dead. The story of the valley is a story of revival, of restoration not through effort but through the breath of God. Because no matter how far hope has fallen, no matter how broken a life may be, no matter how long it has been since you felt alive, there is no death too deep for God's Spirit to revive. We are the bones, dry, scattered, forgotten, and yet, through the word of the Lord, we are called to rise. The same breath that breathed life into Adam in the beginning now breathes into the lifeless places of our lives. He doesn't just rebuild us, he resurrects us, not as we were, but as something stronger, sharper, more aware of his power. Imagine the awe of Ezekiel, watching what was once a wasteland now filled with living souls, each one a testament to divine mercy. Imagine the hope that surged in his heart as he realized God hadn't forgotten his people. He hadn't abandoned them to ruin. He was still writing their story, and the next chapter would be glory. It's easy to feel forgotten, to believe the bones will stay dry, that the promises are dead, that the dreams will never wake up. But the God of Ezekiel is the God of today. He still asks, can these bones live? And when we respond in faith, he moves. He speaks. He breathes. He revives. So don't fear the valley. Don't despise the silence. Don't count the bones and assume it's over. Because where man sees a graveyard, God sees a battlefield waiting to rise. Where we see endings, he begins anew. Where we feel breathless, he sends his spirit. When we are weak, he is mighty. The valley of dry bones is more than a miracle. It is a metaphor for divine intervention when all hope seems lost. It teaches us that God doesn't need ideal conditions to act. He speaks into chaos. He creates from dust. He restores what was once rejected. He speaks to bones and builds nations. He speaks to wounds and makes warriors. And so when you find yourself in a valley, dry, alone, without breath, remember Ezekiel. Remember the bones. And remember that the same voice still calls out today. Live.